Do you feel like you're stuck or find yourself attracting the same type of relationships and negative experiences, or just not manifesting what you want in life? Welcome to Heal Your Story. I'm your host, Heidi. Here we discuss all things life, love, relationships, the relationship with yourself, and the stories we tell about ourselves and others. I help people get out of their busy heads and get back in touch with their heart space to learn self-love and help heal their story. I'm a heart space and relational coach, a holistic health practitioner, and author at HeidiDelaire.com and LoveWideOpen.com. Let's go hold some heart space together. Hello and welcome to episode 110. It takes courage to be vulnerable. So today's episode is really coming from a place within myself and realizing that although I often share vulnerable things about myself, that over the last month, I've been going through a medical thing that has really sort of thrown me through for a loop. And what I realized, what was honestly happening, is that I was trying to be too strong all by myself. And that I wasn't fully being vulnerable and sharing my feelings around it all. It's affected my work online, my work in my local practice, and also brought up some old things of having to be strong even in the face of your own crisis, which I think is 100% fine and good. And yeah, we have to be strong so that we can get through our own crises. But there's also a power in being vulnerable to say, shit, today I freaking can't do it all. I need your help. And so there's great courage in being vulnerable. You know, I have this Facebook group that's an extension of the podcast here. It's a discussion group around Heal Your Story and the topics that we talk about. And it's hard. It's hard for people to be vulnerable and courageous, to come forward, speak up, even though it's a safe container. So on May 13th, 2022, this past Friday, I dropped in a video into my group and just really talked about kind of what was going on with me, why I still wasn't showing up in the group, why I was having this problem, and sharing some vulnerability around it all. And so I've had this, I'm going to keep it real brief because you guys don't need to know all this, but I have this little scar on the side of my face now from a small procedure I had done. And I didn't realize how self-conscious I was about it, right? Until somebody flipped it on its head for me and just said, you know, all great warriors have great scars. Just from hearing that, I was like, oh my God, I'm being ridiculous. First of all, nobody cares. You know, they don't care that I've got a mark on my face. I'm the only one who cares. So go, show up, be vulnerable. Let's talk about this. You know, honestly, the second I hit upload for this 7-8 minute video that I did for my group, which, by the way, if you wanted to join, the URL will be in the show notes, that once I released this video, I felt immediate relief. A bit of a burden came off my shoulders, and I was not looking for empathy or sympathy or anything from anyone. I was just sharing in a vulnerability to say, hey, listen, you know, we all go through stuff, and I understand how hard it can be to talk about it, but I'm showing up for myself and for you. And then how do you show up for yourself? How are you showing up for yourself? And I think the biggest way we can actually show up for ourselves is to understand our own vulnerability to ourselves and how that relates to the outside world and the people in our lives. I'm going to dive into a little piece about vulnerability here today. Just share with you a little bit. Many of us were taught to be strong and to keep our problems to ourselves. We were taught that the world is a hostile place and we should practice survival of the fittest. And it's not easy to allow the world to know your flaws, weaknesses, and failures. We can often be ashamed that we're not perfect, but make every effort to convince others that we are. I'm going to stop there for a second and just say that's that old programming of mine, some old people pleaser programming that I've worked very, very hard on. That's why I always say I'm a recovering people pleaser. That this piece about me, that now I have this little visible flaw. What else can everybody see? So it was a real interesting nuance to bring up a little bit of an old patterning to some perfectionism. Vulnerability doesn't come easy, but it provides tremendous freedom and many other benefits. So if you can be vulnerable, it means that you can accept yourself and don't feel the need to hide yourself from everyone else. I've got some ideas here for you to practice self-acceptance through vulnerability. Number 1, realize that fear is the primary obstacle. The fear of rejection and ridicule are the main culprits, and not sharing or not being vulnerable. You might also feel that you lack privacy if you let the world see you for who you really are. The fear of rejection is a common human phenomenon. Number 2, think about the times where you're least likely to be vulnerable and authentic. When are you most likely to pretend to be something you're not? And in what parts of your life do you play small? How could you be more vulnerable in those areas of your life, right? Like, where in your life do you play small, that you're not coming forward with your full self? Number 3, people that allow themselves to be vulnerable are respected, right? Like, if you look out there and all these people are being vulnerable with this and that, and we're like, wow, they're authentic and everything, and yet it's so hard for us to do it with others. So everyone knows how challenging it is to be open and vulnerable, but you gain friends, you gain respect, and you gain the admiration if you can find the strength to be vulnerable. People trust those that are vulnerable. When you're vulnerable, people can see who you are. The fact that you're willing to be so honest gives everyone insight into what makes you tick. People find this comforting and can relax around you. Number 5, everyone has similar issues and challenges. I know we often think we're alone, but we're not. We're alone because we isolate ourselves. We're alone because we isolate ourselves from others by not sharing. So you might be worried that your weaknesses and concerns will make you seem odd, but people more are alike than not. Everyone is struggling with many of the same issues. So when you allow yourself to be vulnerable, you'll also help others to see that their concerns are normal too. So 6, start with the small stuff. There are many ways you can make yourself vulnerable or allow yourself to be vulnerable, but not too much. And so it takes practice. It takes practice to be vulnerable. In time, you can up the stakes as your confidence and courage grow. So, you could give a sincere thank you and explain why you're so thankful. You can admit small weakness to someone. You might admit to someone that you're not very patient, or maybe you're not organized. You can apologize for something that you did or failed to do. Everyone has plenty of opportunities to do this. You could talk about a time you failed. You could pick a small failure that you can now laugh about. Or you could do something in front of others that you're not good at. Maybe you're a terrible bowler, horrible golfer, or bad at playing cards, or you just don't do word games in front of other people because you're self-conscious that you're not good at word games. It's okay. Just do it. Throw the gutter ball. Hit the golf ball and shank it into the woods. Number 7, your relationships are strengthened when you're vulnerable. Being vulnerable encourages others to do the same. You'll become closer to your friends, your family, your romantic partners, your coworkers, your clients, your significant others, just generally anyone. Vulnerability creates a greater and deeper bond between two people. yesterday I had a chance to get out on the river. Some friends invited me out on the pontoon boat, and we headed down the Kennebec River. We were on the water for like 7 hours, and it was wonderful. And I got into conversation with one of my friends, and I opened up about this whole like medical thing and how it really, really bothered me. And in turn, she opened up about something that was bothering her. And she felt, because I was vulnerable, that she could be vulnerable. And it just allowed for a really beautiful back and forth conversation where we could both just see each other and be in each other's presence and just be there for each other while we're in this place. So vulnerability in yourself allows others to be vulnerable. While vulnerability creates emotional risk and uncertainty, avoiding vulnerability creates a whole slew of other challenges. You're never free to be yourself when you are hiding yourself from the world. You can feel lonely, disconnected, and frustrated. Your relationships lack depth. Learn more about yourself and accept yourself for who you are. You'll need to develop courage and personal insight to be vulnerable. And I know, vulnerability can be frightening, but it's a necessary part of freeing yourself from your emotional bondage, right? Like all this stuff's trapped inside. How good would it feel to release some of that? Like I talked about, in my group on Friday, that just putting it in there allowed great freedom. Like I just felt better immediately. So if you want to fully develop as a person, I think vulnerability is a part of that. What are you going to do today to start that for yourself? Take one tiny little action today to show a little more vulnerability. And it's going to look a little different for everyone. So ask your partner or close friend to do something for you or to give you something that you need. That can be easier than sharing something super personal about yourself to start. But then you'll realize, it gets easier and easier and easier. And trust me, I put myself out to the world with this podcast. Super vulnerable. Ask support or advice and just see what happens. See what happens when you can just open the door for yourself to be a little bit more vulnerable. And when you are, it allows you to feel more freedom and connectedness and joy because of that freedom. I'd love to hear your thoughts or anything else around vulnerability. You can reach me on email at hello@HeidiDelaire.com, or you can find all kinds of other fun stuff with the link in the bio. And I have social media channels all over the place. So find me where you want. There are videos, there are more audios, there are courses, and there is coaching for those who find themselves as empaths and sensitive souls who have a tough time getting rid of their anxiety, overwhelm, and not really knowing how to be in the world and not feeling confident. So that's the majority of folks that I help these days. Thanks so much for listening. I look forward to next time. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of Heal Your Story. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find me, my coaching services, my book, or book a Heal Your Story strategy session at HeidiDelaire.com. For other self-development articles, go to lovewideopen.com. And you can also follow me at Heidi Delaire or Love Wide Open on all social media channels. Thanks so much. Sending lots of love.